Everyone's talking about ultra-processed food.
Ultra-processed foods.
Ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods.
So, how harmful are ultra-processed foods for our health?
I can't believe I used to eat some of these foods that I'm about to discuss in this video, and you might be eating them too. I run a diet less than 20% processed because 4 years ago I was admitted to hospital due to severe pain I had in my stomach. I spent the past year getting to grips with the foods that I should be eating, and my health feels incredible. I've had a dramatic improvement. The pain had been building up in the years before my admission, and one morning I woke up in so much agony, all I could do was reach for my phone to call my parents, and that lasted about 3 hours before I could get out of bed. After x-rays, an endoscopy, which goes through the throat by the way, and 47 blood tests, I didn't have a diagnosis of any sorts besides being anemic, and I unfortunately continued to struggle for 3 more years, and so I bunched most of the symptoms up to being down to IBS. I had eaten myself to a debilitating stomach issue which resulted in continuous bloating, flatulence, and onto acid reflux and constant trips to the toilet, all leading to other serious health issues like poor sleep and continued stomach pain, and for some really tough mental states to be fair. As I said, I now run a diet closer to 20%, but back then that used to be anywhere between 80, 90, sometimes even 100% each week. So I'm going to tell you exactly how I achieved this in this video. Processed food is considered among some to be a leading cause of obesity, and I'll leave a link to the study stored in the National Library of Medicine. The Harvard School of Public Health report that processed foods are linked to chronic diseases, poorer brain health, and early death. And if you're not yet convinced on cutting down on your processed food consumption, Yale Medicine can count 32 health risks associated with processed foods. Yeah, so what? These are all just reviews and suggest association. If I think back to my diet in the build-up to the day I physically couldn't get out of bed, we're talking about an 80 to 90% processed diet, which is ridiculous. And I rarely ever cooked for myself. Constantly ordered takeaways and purchased ready meals for most of my week's dinners. Crisps, chocolates, sweets, pastries, you name it. The only reason I wasn't in a worse state than I was because I wasn't stuffing my face with all of that shit. I had a fairly normal eating schedule, but certainly had portions that were a bit too big. And I don't know why it took me 3 years to wake up. But at the end of 2023, I just got the feeling that I needed to make a change. I think more about it though was the fact I wanted to make this change now, rather than always having needed to. I'd given up on trying to be the person with a body that didn't require much exercise, could eat really whatever they wanted, maybe a bit below the average diet, and still keep the fat off, like a lot of my mates. And appreciate they had their own issues, whether that be weight gain or muscle gain. So I gained some vital knowledge in 2024 after joining the Zoe Science and Nutrition program. After about 4 months of eating healthy given foods, I felt that my stomach health had really improved, and I was soon able to leave the house before 9 AM. And genuinely the feeling that I had when I got to that point was amazing. I just felt like I had my life back in control again. It made every single day so much better, and made me so much happier now I wasn't having these IBS symptoms. Obviously the change isn't instant, but I really felt my health improve week by week. And right at the end of this video, I'm going to share a very simple hack that you could implement tomorrow. And this thing helped me massively, so make sure you stick around. So anyways, that's my overview with my beef food. So let's go and dive into the food aisles that you must avoid. The food that people are most surprised about when I tell them. What? You're saying they're playing around with my bread? Maybe, but like I said, I sent myself to hospital from my prior diet. And when I've swapped out store-bought bread for baker's made bread from a baker's or farm shop, my stomach and my arse has always been thankful for that decision. And let me explain why this food might not be suitable for you. To start with, let's talk about shelf life. The Food Standards Agency in the UK and the FDA in America approve the use of calcium propionate and potassium sorbate. And whilst they're both generally considered harmless, calcium propionate has some alarming side effects. I don't know what the barrier of consumption is before this becomes real life, but from my stomach it appears to be regular daily consumption. Calcium propionate has been linked to headaches and migraines. It's also been linked to the increased production of insulin and glucagon, which are hormones that stimulate glucose release. This can lead to insulin resistance, a condition in which our body cannot use insulin properly, which may lead to type 2 diabetes, along with a study in 27 children that found some experienced irritability, restlessness, poor attention and sleep issues after consuming calcium propionate, while potassium sorbate on the other hand is less harmful, with the only bit of research pointing to allergic reactions. Potassium sorbate is used in food and cosmetic products, and if you feel itching, mouth tingling and see swelling, then you should consult your doctor. These preservatives, mainly calcium propionate, can also be bad for your gut health because these preservatives have especially potent antimicrobial properties known as lantibiotics. If your gut is imbalanced via irregular or overconsumption, these antimicrobial preservatives can indiscriminately kill off gut microbes. And there's always an attempt to improve the appearance and texture of bread. Dough conditioners like ascorbic acid and potassium bromate are added to strengthen the dough, but it's also used to enhance elasticity and improve volume. Potassium bromate, for example, is an oxidizing agent that is considered a potential human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. And this report from the New Jersey Department of Health and Senior Services said it should be handled as a carcinogen with extreme caution. Other things like emulsifiers are used in a lot of breads as well, which a lot of people have become more and more aware about. There's been a lot of studies and reviews on emulsifiers of late, and the standouts don't sound too good. For those of you that don't know, emulsifiers are additives that are used to mix liquids that don't normally mix together, such as water and oil. And in the making of bread, sodium styrositol lactylate. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, that's occasionally used to help improve softness and extend the shelf life again. There's an article in the National Library of Medicine which claims that this emulsifier inhibits bacterial butyrate producers. Bacterial butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid produced by gut bacteria. It is generally considered beneficial for gut health and overall well-being, providing energy for colon cells, supports the immune system, reduces inflammation, and may even help prevent cancer. And sodium styrositol lactylate inhibits the production of this fatty acid. The single fact that I undoubtedly get the biggest reaction from, that wholemeal bread is guaranteed to be worse for you than 50-50 or 100% white bread. And that's because of the bleaching agents and the caramel colouring. And if we take caramel colouring as an example, it's again another situation of generally being considered safe for consumption, but concerns exist regarding potential carcinogenicity, particularly from this, which I can't pronounce. California has listed 4-mel as a carcinogen, and not to mention the high levels of sugar and salt, which are often added to compensate for flavour loss due to the processing techniques used. So to summarise, the health concerns associated with bread are as follows. Potential carcinogens, where potassium bromate is linked to kidney and thyroid cancers and banned in several countries. This thing, used as a dough conditioner, and when baked, it can form compounds associated with cancer. Negative impact on gut health through use of emulsifiers like calcium propionate, I mentioned earlier. Hormonal and developmental effects in children, and misleading health perceptions with colouring and bleaching agents to make the bread appear healthier. And to be fair to us, it's really hard for us to shift through all of this shit. During my research, I did reach out to the Real Bread campaign for a short clip, but they were too busy. And I'm going to be doing in-depth videos on all of these sections. So make sure you subscribe and turn the bell notification on, and hopefully in my bread video, they'll be willing to get involved. The first thing that comes to mind, well, two things really, are yogurts, flavoured and Greek, and dressings for things like salads. Granted, there's a level of processing required for even the healthiest of these food types, but what's important in your choice is the scale of processing. Full-fat Greek yogurt is a key part of my diet, particularly for my breakfasts. Flavoured yogurt is the second food in today's list that I won't touch, let alone look at for reasons I'm about to explain. Ultimately, the flavoured, small yogurt packs stacked at the supermarkets, packed with sugar and other additives, is backed up in this Healthline article. Every brand, every flavour, and each style of yogurt will vary in thickness and consistency due to differing levels of additives. Healthline have provided this nutrition card to compare the two yogurt types, and straight away you can see that the Greek yogurt is better for you across the board. However, Greek yogurt has an additional processing step, which removes the whey, which eliminates some of its lactose, reducing its overall carb and sugar content. On the other hand, protein remains intact throughout the straining process, so its density provides much more protein. Greek yogurt is incredibly versatile, making use for marinades and replacing other processed alternatives. A great example here is using Greek yogurt rather than coconut milk, so the things you need to weigh up are swapping to Greek yogurt, or think carefully about the flavoured branded yogurts you buy and definitely look at their nutrition cards to identify the level of additives and sugar content. Before we move on though, I'm afraid to say there is another layer of thinking you need to apply before buying your yogurt, whether flavoured or Greek. This is perfectly construed in this article written by Courtney Schumann for the University of Chicago Medicine website. But before we dive into this piece, I want to highlight an important caveat that Courtney points out, and that's the fact that it's not a one-size-fits-all answer because of the number of varying factors which we all know about. Courtney also raises the question I've been asking for the past year in regards to full-fat versus low-fat foods. What are you substituting in place of fat? The foods often have added carbs, which probably isn't beneficial. She states that you want your carbs to come from high fibre foods as much as possible. So, what's the issue with low-fat food products? As mentioned, it typically means higher amounts of carbs. Courtney also discusses the impact on salad dressings, which she suggests to completely avoid, as these are often higher in added sugars. Why? To give it the same mouthfeel and texture. Given all of that information, I'd love to hear from you about this topic in the comment section down below, and let me know if any of the points that I've made have made you think again about yogurt. Now, I could have discussed milk in the last section, but due to it being an important product, I wanted to give it its own section, because there are more reasons to consider for the milk that you buy than just the amount of fat content. Mike the dietitian made an X post the other day about this. He discusses the impact that whole milk has on protein synthesis over the impact of skimmed milk. I have a podcast in the pipeline with Mike, where we'll discuss all things IBS, ADHD and weight loss. I found Mike on X and instantly aligned with him due to the issues I had with my IBS, due to the fact we both had ADHD, and also due to the fact that we'd had weight loss problems in the past. And it's really good to see he's got a good following. So make sure you subscribe and turn the bell notification on to be notified when this is published. And milk's another food product that gets processed. Whatever type of milk you're getting, it's been processed. But then again, it's another food that has varying levels of processing. Whole milk is the least processed out of the cow milks because less processing steps are taken to make it. And I'm one of those victims because I used to religiously purchase semi-skimmed milk purely for its low fat content until I became aware of these additional processes. All milk needs to be pasteurised and homogenised. However, skimmed and semi-skimmed milk goes through centrifugal separation and microfiltration. These processes also reduce fat-soluble vitamins, like vitamins A, that are artificially added back later. Where this article from Little Brothers Fresh Dairy Products claims these processes don't change the nutritional content of milk. But then again, these guys produce milk, and you need to consider their motive for saying that. If these processes have the ability to reduce vitamins like vitamin A, only to be added back later, I would argue that that does actually in fact change the nutritional profile of the milk. But let me know what you think about that in the comment section down below. Do you agree or disagree? Ultimately, you need to drink the milk that suits you best for your situation. For me, processed foods had been about 80 to 90% of my diet previously, and this was just another area that I could cut that down a little bit. This is a quick one, and if it's not blatantly obvious to you already, this stuff is for your body. Everyone loves the occasional sweet, piece of chocolate or slice of cake, and that's completely acceptable. You've probably heard this a million times already, but this is okay within moderation. But the moderate amount of consuming confectionery for me is still very small. Of course I still eat this, but I eat it so infrequently a packet of sweets or a bit of chocolate once a month is nothing to worry about. And I'm on the extreme end due to my body's poor ability at handling fat and sugar in my blood. Backed by a glucose tracker for 2 weeks, blood and stool samples and Zoe Science and Nutrition were able to provide me with all this information. I used to not be able to leave the supermarket without picking a sweet treat up. I'd always just veer off into that aisle. I even told myself it's a treat, but it's not a treat when you're doing it all the time. which I certainly was, the concept of a treat goes out the window. But that's the way that these foods need to remain. That's the status they need to be given. It's a treat, and you have it very infrequently. Needless to say, I don't even step foot in this aisle anymore. I don't even accept when someone offers. Again, maybe not the case when I occasionally drink with my mates, which is also few and far between, but something we'll also discuss later in this video. My job is in data and data visualization, and part of me wishes I had a heat map over time of my trips to my local Sainsbury's. The difference in time spent in certain aisles will be stark, but it's been paramount to my improved mental health, physical health and happiness. Quick and easy, but full of the worst of the processed foods. And I'm talking about the ready meals in supermarkets, not the ready meal companies like HelloFresh and Gusto. Some of those can actually be quite good, but ready meals undergo extensive food engineering processes that often prioritise convenience, shelf life and mouthfeel over nutritional value, and that's in order to keep you coming back and buying the same ready meal. The first of which are high levels of preservatives to extend the item's shelf life, excessive sodium content for flavour enhancement and preservation, the use of processed ingredients stripped of natural nutrients and fibre, and the addition of food substances with no culinary use, such as high fructose corn syrup, modified starches, and protein isolates, application of additives for cosmetic functions, including flavours, colourings, emulsifiers, and gums, and sweeteners, industrial techniques like extrusion, moulding, and pre-frying. And I'll leave articles to all of this in the description down below. But to give some sort of idea to you, extrusion is a process where food materials are forced through a shaped opening under controlled conditions of heat, pressure and shear, resulting in various shapes, textures and cooking levels, and not to mention the sophisticated packaging that it all comes in, often using synthetic materials. Doing my research, I came across this website which had a page showing the machines they had on offer for commercial use. And these processes often result in meals high in unhealthy fats, sugars, and empty calories, while lacking simple nutrients like vitamins, minerals, and fibre. Comment below if you can see what the regular theme is here in this video. The use of highly processed ingredients and additives can contribute to poor overall nutrition and potential health risks. I remember when I was having 4 or 5 ready meals a week, I'd feel the constant stomach pains and stodgy feeling. I remember getting into bed and feeling so stuffed I wanted to be sick. I couldn't get to sleep for hours, and I remember the instant onset of acid reflux every single night. And I'd remember the horrible mornings that would follow. To say the least, I'm not missing that and I'm certainly not missing the slow, lethargic, groggy feeling I'd have on the evening of or the morning after a ready meal. So this is just another food type that I'd simply refuse to consider, even look at when shopping. It might sound like a bit of a hyperbole, but I genuinely feel my tummy turn when I see that on the shelves. That's probably a bit of PTSD from the time that led up to my hospital trip. But what about convenience? I want to make it clear that in this video I'm not telling you what you should do with your diet. All I'm doing is taking you on my journey of realisation and implementation. It's what this channel's about. But even when it comes to convenience, I won't succumb to a ready meal. I prefer to not eat because the impact that has on my IBS would actually be beneficial, and I prefer that than temporarily fixing my hunger. Plus it gives me a bit more time in a fasted state, which is always beneficial for my weight loss. These are a bit harder to pick apart because this pretty much encompasses most things. But being reasonable, I'm going to generalise a little bit. So this is a food type that you definitely want to be checking the label of. Pre-packaged foods like cereals, frozen meats and pizzas undergo various processing methods that can significantly alter their nutritional content and structure. These are some of the concerning food engineering processes used in their production. This article from an engineering company goes into detail about the production and processing of breakfast cereals, high pressure cooking and extrusion which can destroy nutrients and create potentially harmful compounds, and an article from Zoe about identifying UPFs bullet breakfast cereal as having artificial additives like dyes, stabilisers and flavour enhancers involved in their creation, and the incorporation of refined sugars and unhealthy fats, making them calorie dense with little nutritional value. Some of the best examples here are the obvious ones. Cereals like Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, Crunchy Nut and Cheerios, even the perceived to be healthy Weetabix. I mean, it's considerably better than some of the others on the list. but it's a cereal that's still a long way off its original ingredient of whole oats. I wonder how they're made to stay in the shape they are for as long as they can. Again, what's it being replaced with to make it be able to do this? And that's why I only ever have breakfasts that I make from scratch, and they're incredibly healthy and tasty at the same time. I've honestly surprised myself with the quality of my breakfasts, so comment below if you'd like to see some of my recipes. Now, frozen meats. These foods often subject to quick freezing methods like liquid immersion or cryogenic freezing, which can affect the structure of the meat. And we're back to the addition of preservatives and other additives to extend shelf life. The mechanical processes that can alter texture and moisture content. I found this article from SR Publications that explains how the shelf life of meat is determined, and it mentions that all the parameters are influenced by these techniques of freezing. With slow freezing, the article basically explains that this method causes the development of greater ice crystals. This will result in mechanical damage to the food due to the volume change relating to the larger crystals. And with quick freezing, the change in volume is less and the periods of crystallization are shorter, consequently resulting in less mechanical damage than slow freezing. And this applies to other frozen foods like frozen pizzas. I used to crave the Sainsbury's own brand barbecue chicken pizza. Granted, this wasn't frozen, but the ingredients would have been through the same processes. But this is one of the many foods that I don't even consider anymore. And when I do for the very, very rare occasion, I usually don't feel too good. I just take the hit and treat it as a lesson in managing my food prep better. And as you can tell, there's some commonalities amongst all of these sections. And that is the extensive modification of ingredients, resulting in products far removed from their original form. I'm not going to talk about fizzy drinks too much here because most of them are a given. And another common thing that people are generally aware of is the replacement of full sugar to zero or light alternatives, which are branded as containing minimal or no added sugar. Question though, what are you replacing it with? And that question's popped up again. And the reason behind this are the additional chemicals that are used in replacement of. I'm not too privy about this. But in this section, I'm actually going to talk about drinks that people generally perceive to be healthy, rather than the obvious ones like I've just mentioned, such as these innocent smoothies that are actually not so innocent, slapped with the labellings promoting the fruits and healthy vitamins the drink contains. Very often these smoothies are branded as having no added sugar, and I'm pleased to hear that, because once you blitz anything, you're breaking down the healthy fibres of the fruit, and you're just left with sugar. The fibre is what helps you digest the sugar in the first place, and helps you level out your blood levels post-consumption. This is what causes people to crash, most often associated to the afternoon slump, and that happens after people eat their high-carb lunches. Repeated spikes like this cause insulin resistance and increases your risk to type 2 diabetes. So really, these things are just a bottle of sugar, and I can prove it. Innocent smoothies have the same amount of sugar as Coca-Cola, so a 750ml bottle of Innocent smoothies contains more than an adult's daily recommended amount of sugar. While Innocent smoothies may contain some vitamins and minerals, their high sugar content and reduced fibre make them more similar to sugary beverages than whole fruits in terms of health impact. Moving on to portion size, because most people wouldn't eat 4 bananas, a couple of apples and maybe a handful of berries in one sitting anyway, or even in a day. Because it's in liquid form, it's easy to consume excessive amounts without feeling too full, and that's another danger, unlike the whole fruit. And here we're going back to the fibre point. Fibre is satiating. When you blitz it, you remove the fibre, you reduce the satiation. Similar to the low fat versus full fat scenario, what are you adding or replacing in these foods to make it low calorie? When comparing low calorie to normal foods, it's important to note that while these substitutions can reduce calories, they may also affect taste. And the way they do this is through using ingredients pushed through ultra processing techniques. Things like sweeteners, fat substitutes, and bulking agents. Low calorie or artificial sweeteners are often used as an alternative to sugar. One of the most disgusting things I've come across are some of the gum bulking agents. Gum bulking agents are a non-nutritional additive that increases the volume of food without changing its taste. They're generally derived from food gums. Guar gum, locust bean gum, and xanthan gum are just some of the most common ones. There's plenty of videos about this, but browsing YouTube one day I watched a quick 15-minute video by Channel 4 or BBC, one of the two, I can't quite remember. Some chap from one of these news channels was touring one of the food facilities, and the food they demoed was own brand mayonnaise. They showed how they use certain gums to cut costs while not losing the flavour and at the same time bulking up the product. For those of you not from the UK, BBC and Channel 4 are two news outlets over here. If I find the exact video, I'll leave the link in the description down below. If not, I'll find one similar, and you can see for yourself the type of backhanded that they do to make these products. Looking back, this was one of my turning points for cutting these types of foods completely from my diet. It literally made me feel so sick just watching what they were doing to these own brand mayonnaise that I was happily buying and chucking onto my plate. Anything from sauces, dips, pasta sauces, smoothies and ready meals. Everything we've discussed in today's video. And this is unfortunately the case for pretty much any food that you can think of that has a light or 0 calorie version of itself. And obviously there's a relative scale of bulking agents usage. I wasn't sure if I should do this section because its main issues are ones we've already discussed. And then I had a quick look at some of the own brand sauces and the ingredients they use, which are on supermarket websites. As you've guessed, the ingredients in these sauces are worse than expected, hence why I felt this section was needed. And to be honest with you, I actually don't know where to start with this, but this guy does.
It boils down to, if you're reading an ingredients list and there's something on there that you don't normally find in a domestic kitchen, a stabiliser, an emulsifier, a flavouring, the product is almost certainly ultra processed.
And all of these cheap and own brand sauces pretty much have everything Dr. Van Tulleken just listed. Dr. Chris Van Tulleken is an infectious disease doctor and a BBC presenter, and he's best known for his #1 Sunday Times bestseller, Ultra Processed People, which I actually have somewhere and I'm still yet to read. But that should be enough for you to now want to be checking the labels of these sauces that you pick before you make that purchase. And unfortunately, this applies to any wet sauces that you can think of. From mayonnaise to ketchup to mustard to salad dressing, peppercorn sauce, etc, etc. And that's partly why the taste and texture of restaurant food is so much better than what you can do at home. It's because they use stuff that you don't normally see in your cupboards. Things to help thicken sauces and give you that added mouthfeel. And there's that term again. And honestly, I have spent ages browsing YouTube for that video that I mentioned earlier. And 3 months into researching, planning, editing, scripting, I haven't been able to find it. But it really is truly frightening to see what they do to some of these sauces. And only when you start paying attention to the labels will you start realising how bad this stuff can be for you. So next time, maybe just leave it off your shopping list. Wow, jeez. Whoa. Hey guys, thank you for those of you that are still here. That genuinely was the longest video that I've ever spent piecing together, researching, filming, editing, the whole lot. Crazy amount of time. I didn't add it up and I probably should start doing that. I've had a change of pace lately. Work's been ridiculously busy. I've taken on a serious amount of responsibility. Just another level that I've not been used to before. But if you've enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave a like and possibly even subscribe to the channel. And hopefully YouTube will pick this up and start pushing it to some other people that might need this. And as I came to the end of the editing aspect of this video, I spent 5 days eating whatever was convenient. And that's because it was Easter weekend and I was here, there and everywhere. I spent 2 days with some family friends, and when I came back, I had a pretty good party with my mate for his birthday. And this is one of my issues I've got right now, is that when I'm going to be away or too busy to really cook, plan my cooking, plan my meals, all that sort of stuff, I tend to shy away from making big batches of food, which is really how you want to be doing it as someone who cooks for themselves. And that's because I'm conscious of my food waste. And I've just had too many periods where I've thrown away good food that kind of turned bad, so it wasn't really good anymore. You get what I mean. But this time it suits the ending of this video, because the following 3 days after that, I had awful stomach pains, many trips to the loo, and I was pretty lazy with my apple cider vinegar consumption as well. And this is the tip I mentioned earlier where you can start today. They sell apple cider vinegar in most health shops and it's pretty affordable as well. And a 500ml bottle will last you quite some time. But I decided to pick up this bad boy, the 5 litre bib, or otherwise known as bag in box. Same concept as boxed wine. I personally go for Willie's apple cider vinegar, but there are many brands out there that you can choose. The reason why I go for this one is because it's UK made, and this particular flavour has the lowest amount of sugar to calorie ratio, and it's their raw and unpasteurised one. So yes, it doesn't taste as good as the others, but you're getting a better sugar to calorie ratio that you really want to look for. And I consume it in the evenings. I take about a 25 milliliter shot of apple cider vinegar with at least 100 milliliters of water, because otherwise you're going to cause yourself some throat irritation. If you choose to do it in the morning, you can do it in the morning. If you choose to do it in the evening and in the morning, you can do it in the evening and the morning. Or the recent trend is doing it just after you finished your meal, or even with your meal. So I'll leave a couple of links to apple cider vinegar brands that I'd recommend in my description down below. And if you fancy checking them out, feel free to use those. And this all resulted in me not being able to go to the office at the day that I suggested. I just didn't feel comfortable leaving the house at a time that would make me get to the office on time. It just wasn't going to happen. And if you've ever been in that position, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So get involved in the comments below, because it's a safe space and it'd be good to hear how you handle certain things. Maybe you might be able to help someone else with your suggestion. And I need to be better with my portions, and by that I mean divvying it up, putting it in the freezer when I know I'm not going to be eating it for a few days, so that it doesn't go bad and so that I don't waste that food and I don't end up ordering food, picking up something convenient. You know how it is. But those 5 days are a perfect real life example as to how UPFs and PFs can affect certain people, particularly people like me. And to be honest, I hate it. So I try my best to mitigate against it by reducing the amount of UPFs and PFs that I have in my diet. And for me, it's been a resounding success. So if that's not something that you've tried to help yourself, definitely give it a go. And anyways, once again, that was the longest video that I've ever edited in my whole entire life. The amount of care, time and attention that I've given this thing. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it. So thank you all for watching all the way to the end. I really do appreciate it. And if you've appreciated the effort that's gone into this video, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section down below. And drop me a like on the video as well, as that really helps. And drop a dislike if you didn't like it. And don't forget to subscribe if you like my content. Other than that, click these two videos here. I think you'll like them.